This film of the Air Scout camp in 1968 was shot entirely by the Scouts themselves. The campsite was in Benarty Hill, high above Scotland Well and the Portmoak airstrip on the side of Loch Leven. We were sharing a campsite with some friendly cows who occasionally made unexpected appearances. Being high up on the hillside, we had excellent views. As usual at camps, the flying fox was always fun. But on such a steep slope, rather more vigorous methods were used for braking than normal. Despite that, there were always scouts clamouring for another go. Although we had superb weather for the whole camp, there were clouds first thing in the morning, which gave a very strange impression. In 1968 in Scotland, there were 2 weeks of blazing sun, with the temperatures in the 70s or mid-20s in modern terms, and our camp was right during the middle of this period. With all the sun, there was a statutory break after lunch. Lying down and doing nothing seemed to appeal to them all in the heat. With the gliding centre at Portmoak so close, it was common to see gliders following lift all the way along the ridge of Benarty Hill. One day, all the scouts hiked across the Lowland Hills. For some it was their 7-mile hike. They then spent the afternoon at Falkland Palace, one of the royal palaces of James IV and V, and a favourite of Mary Queen of Scots. Portmoak airstrip is a major gliding centre and has facilities both for winch launches and aerotow. However, for today, the Scout Oster was at the airstrip at Portmoak and was being used to tow a glider to Glenrothes airfield, which we were using for Visitors' Day and our flying. During our flight to Glenrothes, we overflew our campsite. We flew over Glenrothes airfield and part of Glenrothes before dropping off the glider and landing at the airstrip. The scouts acted as the ground handlers for the glider. Even the scout leader had a chance to go up in the air. The takeoff begins with the Auster taking up the slack on the tow rope, and when the pilot receives the signal that the tow rope is taut, he then increases power. The glider has a much lower stall speed than the Auster and takes off first. The pilot in the glider then has to try to keep it from climbing too high and minimizing the porpoising effect before the tug takes off. Once both aircraft are in the air, it's much easier piloting for both pilots. The tug then gradually circles, gaining height for the glider behind it, and once the agreed height is reached, the glider casts off. The Auster then comes down low over the airfield so that it can drop off the tow rope, as it would be unsafe to land still, having it trailing behind. The Auster then lands to get ready for the next tow. The glider circles around, gradually losing height unless the pilot can find a thermal or slope or wave lift. Once it has run out of height, it then has to land on the airstrip and be made ready for the next aerotow. One of the scouts was too young and small to be allowed to handle the controls in the glider himself, but instead asked the pilot to do some aerobatics while he was in the plane. He got a spiral dive, followed by a loop, then 2 wingovers, and finishing with a stall, and he even held on to his lunch. At the end of the day, the Auster and the glider had to be taken back to Portmoak. A fine journey back towards Loch Leven into the setting sun.